A church member invited me to do some turkey hunting on his property near Mason County, Texas. I'd never hunted this deep into the hill country, and man, was I in for an adventure. We left late Thursday afternoon so that I could get at least 2 morning hunts in. The drive was absolutely phenomenal. Since all I had to do was follow the landowner, I pretty much drove on autopilot watching the beautiful horizon. We got to the property late. Cree had never been this close to a cat before. This kitten is probably less than a year old and is more like a dog in personality than a cat, but Cree had no idea how to respond to it. When we walked up to the ranch house, there was a deer less than 10 yards from the porch. The next morning, it was extremely windy. The sunrise was absolutely stunning. I usually wait until I hear toms before I start calling, but there was no talking at all. I went ahead and gave it a few squawks, but nothing. Around 8:30, the wind finally laid down for a little bit. A pair of hens came walking in. They weren't talking, nor did I glass any toms. They kinda locked up, so I decided to give them a squawk. They gone. I sat for another 30 minutes. The wind started back up again, so I called it quits. I didn't get this on video, but I made a huge mistake with Cree and cows. I crossed over the cattle guard and put Cree down. The second his paws hit the ground, the white cow charged him. I jumped in between her and Cree, but had to elbow her in the head. Cree jumped onto me peeing. It was a dangerous situation, but also comical. Cree and I went down to the spring-fed creek. Like most Goldens, he loved it. And of course, his drying off method is always interesting.
Oh gosh.
We drove around the property, and I got history of the land and wildlife. The hummingbirds were buzzing, and it got incredibly hot for an April afternoon. This cat is beyond entertaining.
You're so cool.
I didn't do an afternoon hunt, not much into hunting because of the heat, but also enjoyed the conversation, company, and wildlife. He usually averaged 15 to 20 deer per feeding schedule. He feeds these deer year-round. They never hunt this feeder unless it's hogs. This one buck is named Dopey. They've discovered he's definitely got some cognitive issues. He's not people shy at all. I did a coyote set an hour after sunset. Since this area is not familiar to me, I hunted the first wide open space I could find, which happened to be the bottom of the creek. Since my FLIR 736 has such a tight field of view, I've learned to place my Primos Alpha Dog collar a minimal of 100 yards away. Within seconds of turning on the call, I got multiple responses, and we'll pick up the action from here. If you watch the shot in slow motion, it went right between his front legs. What you didn't see in the video was the third coyote that literally ran up next to my right leg before these two flashed into the field. None of these coyotes were of any significant size. The craziest part of this hunt is after missing the coyote, I went to pick up my call. One of the coyotes kept calling from the shoreline. I laughed it off until he started following me. Every time I kicked over a rock, he started barking back. For the next 40 minutes, this coyote kept this up. I tried to get a heat signature of him so I could get a shot, but I could never find him. About an hour later, the landowner's son-in-law came in. We set out for a coyote hunt, but nothing came in. I honestly think it's because I called up this area and burned it out. We went into a high open field adjacent to the house. I saw a flash of a coyote, but he never came out into the open space for a shot. The next morning, the toms were very talkative just at sunset. They had already flown down off the roost about 1,000 yards away. I didn't catch any video, but I worked towards their area at the crack of dawn. I don't know if it's possible to spot and stalk turkeys, but I wasn't going to sit in a blind when I can hear them gobbling 1,000 yards out. I saw one hen and kept hearing toms, but they locked up and never came in. To be honest, this has to be one of the most satisfying hunts ever. Went and walked the dog. We had a stellar breakfast, fed the moo-moos, and around lunchtime, the hen showed up around the feeder. I'm not much into hunting turkeys under a feeder. We went down to the creek to do some fishing. This may be the highlight of the trip for me. I've never sight casted fish in crystal clear water before. Even though these were all small fingerlings, it was something that I thought about for the next few days. I headed out after dinner. I got stuck in the creek, had to get fished out, and I was home by midnight. I've been invited back. I will definitely be bringing my fly rod. So until then, stay tuned for my next Mason County adventure.